Get ready to break molds and blaze trails. Welcome to the Chelsey Holm podcast, your shortcuts to wellness, business, and growth with a twist. Let's flip the script and unlock your full potential together. Ooh, unexpressed emotions being stored in your body, impacting your business, stunting your growth. Ooh, I got an episode for you today. Oh man, this is what I have been walking through, and it's been such a good thing. God has really had me on this journey of emotional stability and processing things and getting out of this headspace of doing all the time and bringing me into a place of calm and sitting with my emotions and being able to see and recognize this may be heavy and we may be dealing with some grief or some sadness or whatever, but also in that moment, I'm also feeling a lightness and a freedom and a joy and the calm and the peace and the slower pace, right, that I'm bringing in. And it's been a crazy wild ride, but so good. So I wanted to share with you about how these unexpressed stored emotions have been playing out in halting my business's growth and, keeping me from feeling completely whole as a person, because we are holistic beings. And, while I wear a lot of hats, I am all of those together. And so what I have done in my life is, in an effort to protect myself from complete devastation, right, is I moved into a very compartmentalized life. So there was Chelsey mom, Chelsey wife, Chelsey business owner, and I did this so that if in any area I experienced loss or hurt or grief or whatever, it wouldn't completely devastate me because there were these other compartments that were still safe, right? And I thought that this was really smart, right? I thought that it was pretty intentional. I thought that, and here's the thing too, I think the world also looked at me and said, wow, that's so organized. That's so proactive. That's just smart, right? And it presents to the world really smart. But the problem with that is, again, I am a whole being. I am me, and I'm not just one part in this area. And so what's been happening is I've been in these swing cycles, I guess you could call it, of this need to feel on all the time, right? On as a mom all the time, and not allowing myself to have off days of I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to parent like a boss here. I can just be a real human in this moment, right? I can be fun and I can be silly and I can, and I can also have the heavy conversations, and I can also demand respect, right? And command respect with my children. And also we can have popcorn for dinner and just be fun and goofy and all those things, right? And, this inability to see my children because I was completely ignoring and not seeing myself, right, as the full version of me. And then, in my marriage, same thing of, kind of living guarded, but not unintentionally guarded, not secure, questioning myself all the time of am I the problem? What am I doing wrong? And certain things, when we would have a disconnect or a breakdown of communication or whatever, and taking on responsibility for things that actually had nothing to do with me, and then bearing that weight and taking on my husband's emotions when those weren't mine to take on in the first place, right? And stuffing everything down and like putting on this like forced front of like everything's good, like I'm good, but not giving myself space to actually process through things like anger, right? Like being angry for certain things and feeling like, well, that's a bad emotion and I'm not going to do that. And so instead forcing myself into this like suspended state of like, ooh, I don't know, just weirdness sometimes, and not fully being able to enjoy each other wholly, because I was a compartment in my marriage, right? And then in my business, right? Like there's business Chelsey. And, you know, especially in the social media space, which I love, like just to be in a time where we can connect to anyone, anywhere in the world who is also on social media, like that, it's wow, like it's just amazing, right? Like what a blessing. And you know, but there was also came with this like this need to always be on my business, like, and this belief that like if I'm not on, I can't make sales, and if I don't make sales, I won't be successful, and so I always need to be on because I always need to be making sales, right? And that's how I'm going to be successful. And that put me into this like cycle of like hustle and just forcing myself to be on, like to show up a certain way, which all of this is very masculine. And I tend to be very masculine. And that's why I get stuff done. And that's why I don't deal with emotions. And that's why, which is ironically funny, because with masculinity does come like some of those like stronger Southern Hemisphere, I guess, emotions, like in my opinion. Maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but this is just my perception that like, I feel like with a man, like anger is like pretty common, right? Like they can feel angry and, you know, but like as a woman, anger is not really cohesive, right? And I'm not saying that's right. That's not right. Right? Like was just my perception. And so it was just very ironic that as, you know, someone who is very masculine and driven and like getting stuff done and checking boxes and not slowing down and moving at a high speed, but then also not allowing myself to feel anger, which is super like weird. You know, and so like, but in my business, because I was equating success to getting stuff done, and showing up a certain way and like just, you know, aggressive, I was lacking. And this is something I'm still currently like in the trenches working on, right? Of bringing in and bringing the wholeness of myself, like the masculine and the feminine. Like the feminine has got lost in the years of doing and showing up and aggressive and all of those. And, you know, so each of these different compartments, like if I experienced loss in any of them, I wouldn't completely fall apart, right? Like it's fine because we still got these other areas, you know, and we're good. But that was really limiting, or has been limiting, like me actually showing up as me, and instead having these like non-congruent beliefs of like I am showing up this way, but like this is actually what I believe. And so I was having these conflicts. And recently I did have a big conflict of these beliefs, and like the whole emotional roller coaster played out. And because I'm doing work with a holistic coach who's helping me through this, like we were able to go through this and process it after the fact. So in the moment, my kids and I, it was Saturday. It was a beautiful day outside, really windy, but it was still beautiful nonetheless, not a cloud in the sky. I love paddleboarding. So I said, hey kids, I said, why don't you bring your fishing poles over to the lake, which is right across the street from us here. Like it's in our neighborhood. I said, I'll paddleboard and you guys fish off the bank. Like this sounds like a lot of fun, right? And it was, that whole time, like I just struggled to be present in that moment and really enjoy like grounding myself and like being in nature and listening to the water and the birds and feeling the sun on my skin and like all those things, because I just had this lying feeling of like, I think I'm doing something wrong. Like someone's going to come along and like this perfect day, if you will, is going to be spoiled because that's how things go, right? Talk about, our strongest thoughts drive the outcomes in our life, right? And towards the end, sure enough, like the guy who's the land developer here, he came over and he's like, hey, like, you guys are in the lake, like, where do you live? And I said, oh, we live here in the neighborhood. And he's like, do you live on the lake? And I was like, no, we live right across the street, and he was like, yeah, he's like, you can't use this lake because you don't live on the lake and you don't have lake insurance. Everyone who lives on the lake gets to use the lake because they have lake insurance. And in that moment, like, I just had like an overwhelming feeling of like dropping in my body, like just sadness, like, just, but then also like this, like I got in trouble, like a little puppy that got scolded, and I went into a stress response and I totally fawned in that moment and was like, oh, that sucks. Like, okay, whatever. But then after the fact, then I got really angry because I was like, the sign says that lake use is private property, but it's for use of residents. It doesn't specify that you have to own lakefront property. It just specifies that you have to live in the neighborhood, right? Which I do. And so I got really mad and I was like, man, I wish I would have said like all these things to this guy. And, and then also in this, like, I don't really want to deal with this anyway. So like, I'm not going to go have a conversation with him. I'm just going to do what I want. And I'm just going to come back out on the lake as much as I want. And I literally don't care. Right. And it was like all these like emotions, right? Like all over the place. And like, I just didn't know what to do with it. And then I was talking to my husband later and like, he's like, yeah, he's like, you're totally right. Like, this is so bogus. And this guy's just on a power trip. And, like, who is he to say that I can use something that God made? I mean, yeah, okay, maybe they made the lake, but they didn't make the water. They didn't make the dirt, right? Like, they didn't make the wind and the sun and the... Okay, anyway, so I digress. All right, all the things, like, it riled me up, and I just felt like I had these two beliefs going on that, like, I want to do what's right, and I want to, be respectful and follow the rules, and yet, when the rules don't align with how I really feel, there's the disconnect here, and it's creating this tension, and I didn't know what to do with it. But in the moment, I had a stress response, and I totally fawned in that moment and, didn't actually vocalize. And my coach helped me walk through that. She was like, in that moment, just take a pause and repeat the question back to them that they're asking you. And, like, you can do that. And because in my mind, I equated anger, like if I was to lean into the anger that I was feeling towards this guy, like, that would not be safe, and that I would come off as a total bitch, right? And like, I don't want someone to perceive me like that because that's not who I am. And so in an effort to not be perceived like that, I completely go the opposite way. And now I'm like fawning all over and not actually vocalizing and standing up for myself, when here's the thing. I will at all costs stand up for someone else who doesn't have a voice, and I will stand my ground no matter what the cost is, but I won't do that for myself. And you can see there's a disconnect in there. So like, I believe in standing up for the underdog, but what about when I am, right? And isn't that interesting, right? And so like, just those kinds of emotional moments of instability, of like unexpressed emotions, your body stores that crap and it creates tension and it creates mistrust in self, that like, I can't trust my feelings and I don't know what to do with them. And so therefore I just ignore them, and they won't be ignored. They have to be processed. They have to be released. And so this is why I'm working with this holistic coach, because I've had years, decades of unexpressed, repressed emotions and incongruent beliefs, and not voicing. Oh my gosh, I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're listening to this podcast. As you know, I believe that if you're not growing, you're dying. So you are in the right place to continue developing your growth mindset. If you have a business and you're an entrepreneur in any capacity, but especially in the social selling world, online and social media, but you're feeling stuck. You've created some level of success, but you can't seem to get past it. You're frustrated. You're feeling burnt out. You're starting to question yourself. You don't feel like you're fully stepping into who you are and how you want to build your business, then go check out my signature course, the Speed and Stability Playbook, and you're going to get timeless principles that are going to be funneled through your strengths so that you can show up and build your business exactly like you want and not how someone is telling you to, so that you can work on the mindset of becoming the person that already has the things that you're looking to create and being able to do that and generate that through any strategy that aligns with you. Go check that out now in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. You know, myself and standing up. And so how is that impacting my business? Well, guess what? Now I'm lacking confidence and I'm questioning myself and how I'm showing up. And I'm afraid to actually voice what I know is true because people might misunderstand me, and people might label me like the wrong thing. That's not even true, right? And so, yeah, your emotions that you're feeling and what you're choosing to do with them, whether you're allowing them space to sit with them or you're just shoving them down and ignoring them like I did for years, those are impacting your business outcomes, right? And it gets back to this deeper issue of compartmentalizing in an effort to keep yourself safe and protected, because that's what we as humans want. Like, we are wired to keep ourselves safe, to not die, right? Like, to recognize when a situation isn't safe for us. But the problem is, when we do this repeatedly and consistently, our bodies will have that same reaction in a situation that actually is safe, but emotionally we don't feel like it is. And so we move into a stress response, and we're not actually, in control of how we're reacting, right? This, if you've ever done something scary, and then you're back in that same situation, maybe it wasn't a life-threatening thing, but you start to have those same feelings, or even just thinking about a memory that was scary. You can feel that in your body, your palms start sweating, your heart starts racing, you start maybe breathing faster, all the things, right? Our brains can't separate reality from when we tell it, and our experiences and what we make those mean about us shape everything for us. And so it's here's my thing is I know these things in my head, right? I know them up here, but actually being present in my body is something that I've not done. Because, and Zach shared this hysterical clip from, what's that show called? Dang, I can't think about what it's called. They're the rednecks. He's he's got his beer and he's in his yard. What's it called? Anyway, it doesn't matter what it's called. But he's talking to, I think it's his daughter, and she's like, how do you not cry all the time? And he's like, when you have a feeling, you just swallow it down. And, when you're feeling pain, you just push that down and you just leave it there. And so she's like, so I just swallow the emotion down? And she's like, well, now it hurts different. Now my stomach hurts. He's like, yeah. And then you just move on. And I laughed and I sent it to my holistic coach, and she's like, tell me, why, you thought this was funny. How did it relate to you? And I said, honestly, I found it hysterical because I can totally relate to that. Oh yeah, I've spent years doing that. But then also I was feeling there was some sadness and grief in that, because it's wow, that is so me. And that is so sad, that I do that to myself. And that's not a healthy thing. And also a little bit of gratitude that I'm so thankful that, I decided to work with this coach to help myself through these things, to get myself out of this high functioning anxiety, which is funny because she said that to me. She's like, yeah, you have high functioning anxiety. And I was like, what? No, I am super good. She's like, yeah, you're super good at managing the overwhelm and the frustration and all the things and all the irons in the fire, because you have high functioning anxiety. And I was like, oh yeah, because it's not like, because like when I think of anxiety, I think about like worrying about things that I don't have any control over, right? And like I don't do that, but when I am in these situations of high stress, high overwhelm, of feeling like I need to be on all the time and forcing myself into that high state emotion, gosh, yikes, like that makes so much sense that like I have so much tension and I have pain in my body. And I told Zach, I was like, sometimes I wonder like how much pain do I actually deal with on a daily basis that would probably kill somebody else. But I don't even realize it because like I've shoved it down for so many years, like, because like I have a lot of tension in my hips and I have a lot of tension in my shoulders and my neck. I remember like being a kid, like I take in emotions and store them in my gut. And like, I remember being a child and like telling my mom, like after like we'd have like a fight or like something would happen or whatever, like my stomach would physically hurt. And it still does that to this day, that like if I'm in an emotional situation, like if Zach and I have like a fight or something or like a disagreement or a miscommunication, like I store that crap in my gut and I have a physical pain in my stomach when that happens. And so it's being able to recognize those things and sit with them, not feel the need to do anything with them, but just sit with them and acknowledge them so that they can be released. Like it seems so simple, and yet we don't know what we don't know, right? Like if you've not had someone teach you how to process your emotions and recognize them and create awareness around them and sit with them and not actually do anything, but be able to release it, like that makes sense, right? It makes sense that, we would struggle with this. And so I hope this episode has really shown some light in the fact that like, we're all struggling in certain capacities, and a lot of it has to do with this just forcing our way through and forcing ourselves to show up a certain way and, thinking along this belief that like I have to do in order to be successful. And yeah, we have to do, but at what expense, right? And we can truly show up in alignment with our whole selves when we learn the connection of emotions to everything else that's going on. And so I hope that this brings you some freedom. It also brings you some relatability. Like if you've ever been like, I don't do feelings, or just rub some dirt in it, or pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just keep on going, right? Like the Miranda Lambert song of like, line your lips and keep them closed. Like, yeah, like there's a reason I like that song, because like that, okay, like, yeah. And it's so interesting. Like, I hope that, you're not alone in this, and this is good work. It can be heavy, but it's also freeing, and it's so good. And it might not be, when you think of like emotional work, processing feelings, like all of this stuff, like doing somatic work and releasing stored emotions, like it may seem like it's totally unrelated to business, but it's not. Like it's related to everything, because you are you in your fullest capacity always. Like that is the hope, and that is the intention, right? And you're not a different you in different areas. And if you are, then you're probably feeling like I was feeling too, that like you got to show up a certain way, and if you don't, you can't be successful there, right? And if you open up all these compartments and step fully into yourself in all these areas as one, as you, like you have to create the safety for your body, that I am safe, I am secure here, I can process these things. This is about sitting here with them. This isn't about doing more, right? Like, and that's scary. And so that's going to start to prompt your stress responses. And this is where I'm at, that like just yesterday after doing this work with my coach, like I was like, oh my gosh, like I have this overwhelming desire to and I was saying self-sabotage, like all of my go-to dopamine hits that are cheap, that don't actually fill me up, that don't actually give me rest, right? That, like eating or shopping online or, just checking out and disassociating, like all those things were like coming up like intense. And she's like, well, obviously, because your body doesn't feel safe right now, because this is the pattern that's been created. And so we need to create that safety for our bodies. And that's as simple as like recognizing that, oh, this is what I'm feeling in this moment, and I can sit here with it and I'm safe, and I can be here, and I can also see the other things that I'm experiencing. And it really does bring so much freedom. And, it's about wholeness. That includes healing, right? Like you stepping fully into who you are, how God made you to be, like who he created you to be, the voice he gave you, and the calling he's placed on your life, and, the people that you get to influence and the people that you get to help. And you are loved regardless of how successful you are in any area or overall. Like you are loved because you are you, and you don't have to give in order to receive. Right? You can freely give and you can freely receive. And they're not directly related. Right? What is that? What is that math? Like when two things are like totally related, like when one increases, one decreases, and whatever. I don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. Math. That's a language in and of itself, which is funny. That's my husband's language. That's not my language. But I am learning. I like simple math numbers because they're always the same, right? That's why I do metrics-driven data, because it helps us to see things and make changes where needed. So, all right, like I said, share this with a friend. I didn't say that, but I'm saying that now. Share this with a friend. Like if they've ever said that to you, like they've been very out of touch with their emotions and very much like only in the happy ones and not in any of the, more perceived as more challenging to deal with, right? Send this to them because they need to hear it too, and they need to go on their own emotionally healthy stability processing, not stuffing journey of their own. And we can do this all together. And the great news is we're all going to grow together, and not just one area of our life, but all areas of our life. This really is one of those rising tide, and all the boats are going to lift. So take care, my friends. Until next time.
Thanks for joining the Chelsey Holm podcast journey. If you've enjoyed challenging the norm and embracing growth with a twist, share the love. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep defying expectations and keep leaning into who God made you to be.